What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Valerio White, checking back in with another video. I go by V for short, and in this video, I will be demonstrating how to build a virtual private cloud from scratch in the AWS console. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so this video is going to be very extensive, but there are three things I want to quickly go over before we get started, okay? The first thing is, what type of virtual private cloud are we going to be building, all right? So if you take a look at the screen, we are going to be building a highly available VPC, all right? So if you look at some of the components, we have 2 public subnets in different availability zones. We have 2 private subnets in different availability zones. We're going to be building instances, private instances, a Bastion host, security groups, configuring the root tables, creating NAC gateways, internet gateways, etc., okay? Now, the second thing I want to talk about is, if you look in the description of this video, I have created a ReadMe file on github.com that explains the process step-by-step in like a PDF file format if you want to go and take a look at that, okay? Now, the last thing and the final thing, the third thing is, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, all right? We're going to be providing a lot of content in this video. We're going to be going through a lot of things in this video, so do me a favor and give this video a thumbs up, all right? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the creation of the VPC from scratch. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our way over to AWS. Go ahead and sign in. If you look on the screen, you'll already see I'm already signed in and I'm at the console home. One note I want to say is I'm operating in US East 1, which is the North Virginia region, okay? So if you want to operate in the same exact region, make sure to click this drop down and click on US East 1, okay? If not, just be mindful if you are operating in a different region, all right? Okay, so step number 1 is to create our VPC, okay? So if we go over, I want you to go to the VPC console. I'm gonna click on it right here. Once it loads up, you'll immediately see the Create VPC button right here. So I'm gonna click on that. And you can actually create your VPC, your subnets, and your root tables all within this UI. However, we're gonna be creating them separately, okay? So I'm gonna click on VPC only. If we scroll down, the name that we're gonna be using for our VPC is gonna be Demo VPC, okay? Scroll down, we're gonna keep that the same. Now, the CIDR block range, this is very important. The range that we're going to be using is 10.0.0.0/16, okay? That provides us 65,536 private IPs, okay? And this range is very important. We're starting with 10 dots specifically because this is a range that's assigned as a private IP range. So you cannot, this protects our network from being exposed to the internet, okay? And there are other private ranges that are starting with 172 and 192, okay? So if you do a Google search, you'll see that, I believe it's the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. They specifically pick these 3 classes of ranges to be allocated to private IPs, okay? And we want to make sure we have that because this is a private cloud, virtual private cloud, okay? So we're going to assign that. Keep scrolling down. We're going to keep the tenancy as default. And the last thing is we're going to go ahead and click this button and create our VPC. That concludes step number 1. Okay, so step number 2 is going to be us creating our subnets, all right? So if you remember the architectural diagram, we're going to be creating 4 subnets. 1 public subnet and 1 private subnet in availability zone A, and 1 public subnet and 1 private subnet in availability zone B, okay? So let's go ahead. We're already within the VPC console. Let's click on the left-hand panel and click subnets, okay? All of these subnets that are currently showing are for the default VPC, right? So as a quick pro tip, let's go ahead and filter by VPC right here, and let's click on the demo VPC that we just created, all right? So now, as you can see, we have no subnets for our VPC. On the right-hand side, we're gonna go ahead and click this Create Subnet button, all right? So let's go ahead and begin creating our 4 subnets. Select the VPC. We're gonna go ahead and select Demo VPC. Scroll down. Let's go ahead and create our public subnet first, okay? So let's go ahead and create the public subnet for availability zone A. So I'm gonna name it public subnet A. The availability zone, make sure you put availability zone A, which is 1A. All right, now the CIDR block. So this is important, okay? So here's the thing. we assigned a CIDR block range on the VPC level in the previous step, right? So the CIDR block range that we assign on the subnet level has to be within the overall VPC CIDR block range we just assigned, right? And they must not overlap. So when we create the next subnet, the CIDR block from the previous subnet must not overlap the next subnet CIDR block range, okay? So for this particular one, I'm going to give it a range of 10.000/24, okay? And that gives us, I think, 256 IP ranges, if I'm not mistaken, about 256, okay? And let's keep going down. Everything will be the same. Let's add a new subnet. And now let's make the public subnet for availability zone B. All right. So I'm pick the region B right there. And again, this can't overlap. So I'm gonna do 001.0/24, okay? So again, this is gonna give us 256 private IP ranges within the public subnet B. And I put the 1 right here so they don't overlap. And just to kind of show you, if I was to put 0, it'll show that it's probably overlapping. Let me see if it shows. Yeah. It'll show if I did that. Yep, okay, so it overlaps. So let's go ahead and put that 1 back there. Okay, so now we're good. It just went away. Now, so we got our public subnets. Let's go ahead and create our private subnets. So private subnet A. Let's go ahead and pick the availability zone A. And now for this one, we're actually going to assign it 4,096 private IPs. Because generally, when you creating your VPC and building out your infrastructure, most of your components are going to be located in your private subnet because it has greater security, okay? So you don't want to expose a lot of your components and resources to the internet. So you're going to be creating a lot of that in your private subnet. So we're going to assign it more IP addresses because once you create certain components like EC2 Instances, etc., they are assigned private IP. So you want to have an abundance of them for your private subnet to choose on. So we're going to be creating 4,096 of them here. So let's put 10.0.16.0/20. Okay. That's going to give us 4,096 private IPs. Let's add 1 more. And that doesn't overlap with any of these. And let's do the last one. So private subnet B. All right. Availability zone, we're going to put B. And then again, we're going to get this 4,096 private IPs. So that's going to be 10.0.32.0/20. Okay. And again, that 32 is so it doesn't overlap with anything we just created. Okay. And that's it. And we're going to go ahead and go down and click create subnet. It's going to create all 4 for us, as you can see here on the screen. All right. And that concludes step number 2. Step number 3 is going to be for us to create our internet gateway and our route tables, okay? Now, before we actually jump into creating those 2 components, I want to first start off by saying we've created 4 different subnets now. And even though we've named 2 of them public subnet, all of them currently are considered private subnets until we create our internet gateway and attach it to the VPC. And we must also change the route table associated with those said subnets, okay? So let's go ahead and convert our private subnets into public subnets for the ones that should be public, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our internet gateway. So we're already in the VPC console. If you go down, you want to click on internet gateways. Once you click on that, as you can see, we don't have any internet gateways. We're going to click on create internet gateway at the top right hand corner. Okay, so let's just name this demo internet gateway. All right, and just hit create internet gateway. And as simple as that, we have created our internet gateway. However, our public subnet still does not have access to the internet, right? We have to change the route tables associated with those subnets, okay? So let's go ahead on the left-hand side, click route tables, and we're actually going to create and associate the proper subnets. And lastly, we're going to add the necessary routes in order to make our public subnets actually public, okay? So first things first, let's go ahead and click create route table at the top right-hand corner. we're actually going to be creating 3 different root tables. We're going to have a public root table for public subnet A and public subnet B, and we're going to have 2 private root tables for private subnet A, and then a separate one for private subnet B, okay? And that's just for high availability. We are only able to attach one NAT gateway to each route tables, so we want to separate them, okay? So let's go ahead for our first one. Let's name it public root table. For the VPC, we're going to select our demo VPC, and we're going to click create root table. All right, let's go back to root tables, dashboard, and let's click on create root table again. This one is going to be private root table A, okay? That's going to be for subnet A, demo VPC, and create root table, okay? Now one more we're going to create. Let's head back to the dashboard, click create root table. And then the last one, we're going to create private root table B, okay? So that's going to be, again, demo VPC and create root table. Okay, so that is done. Let's go ahead and go back to the root tables console. So we've created our 3 root tables that we're going to use. One thing I didn't mention, so when you create your VPC, they automatically give you a default root table. Excuse me, once you create your subnet and VPC, they give you a default root table. So we're going to associate our subnets to the root tables that we just created, and we're not going to use this default root table at all, okay? So let's start off by clicking public root table, okay? And if we click subnet associations, we can see nothing has been explicitly associated with this particular root table, and none of our subnets have been explicitly associated with any root table, okay? So that's what we're going to do. We've selected public root table. We're going to click on actions, drop down button, and then click edit subnets association. So this is our public root table. We want to associate public subnet A and public subnet B, okay? We can keep both subnets, even though they're in different availability zones, in this one root table because we're going to give them the exact same routing principles, okay? So that's why we're going to put it on one root table. So let's click save associations, and that is done. So we got 2 subnets associated with the public, all right? Now let's click on our private root table. Okay, do the same thing, actions, edit subnet. And this is private root table A, so we're going to select the corresponding private subnet A, okay? All right, save associations. And then lastly, private root table B. Let's select that one, click actions, edit subnets association, and then click private subnet B, okay? And save associations. Again, we have 2 separate private root tables simply because we're going to be routing them separately. So one root table will have a separate NAT gateway and the other root table will have a different NAT gateway. So we have to have 2 different root tables for the private. Whereas the public, the routes are the exact same. So that's taking some time to load. Let me actually just refresh it. Okay, let me hit cancel real quick so I can make sure I understand where we are. Okay, so they got an associate for the private root table B. Let me click on that. It's B, so that's correct. The public root table, it should have the both public subnets, which it does. Okay, and then the private root table A should have the public, the private root table, private subnet A, which it does. Okay, perfect. Now, one thing that I did forget, and I'm glad I caught myself, is we must attach the internet gateway. We did not do that before we started creating our root tables. So I'm actually go out of this and click internet gateways. This is the internet gateway we attached. It's called the demo internet gateway. As you can see, the state is detached. So you must click on that, click actions, and then click attach to VPC. The VPC obviously will be the demo VPC. So let's click the drop down. Click on the demo VPC and click attach internet gateway. Okay, now the gateway is attached. Okay, let's go back to root tables. We've already created our root tables. We've already associated the proper subnets with the corresponding root tables that we need. And all of our subnets are still considered private, right? We must adjust the roots in the root table, okay? So the only the only subnets that we want to make public are public subnet A and public subnet B. So we will only adjust the public route table right now. So let's click on public route table, and we must adjust the route. So if we click on routes, you'll see it's only routing any IP addresses within the local VPC range, right? So there's no outside public IP addresses that can route. So let's go ahead and do that. Click actions right here. Click edit routes. You could also click here, edit routes. And we're going to click add route. Click in here, and we're going to select the 0.00/0, which is basically any IP that's everywhere. We're going to click the target, go down to Internet Gateway, which we just created and just attached. And it's going to pop up here, okay? Now, if you don't attach it, as we previously almost did, it won't show up here. So you got to make sure you attach the Internet Gateway to the VPC. So let's go ahead and click on it and click Save Changes. All right. So now let's go to the route tables. And now we have successfully created our 3 route tables, and we've made our public subnets actually public and accessible to the internet, right? So we've actually made our public subnets public, and our private subnets, we're not going to change the route table and connect it to the internet gateway because we want that to remain private, all right? So that concludes step number 3. Okay, step number 4 is create our NAT gateway, okay? Our NAT gateway allows our private instances access to the internet, okay? So our private instances can call on to the internet, and it does it through the route table and through the NAT gateway and then through the internet gateway, okay? So it has an outbound signal that it can access the internet, okay? So let's go ahead and create our NAT gateways. So on the left-hand side, we're going to scroll down till you see NAT gateway. I'm going to click on that, okay? Click the button, create NAT gateway. And we're going to create 2 different NAT gateways, a NAT gateway for the availability zone A and another NAT gateway for the availability zone B in order for us to have high availability, right? So if one availability zone was to go down, we still have a NAT gateway working in the other availability zone so that our instances and our servers and our components would still be up and running, okay? So that's why we're creating 2. So let's go ahead and name this one NAT gateway. So NAT GW for gateway, and then put A. We're going to put the subnet. This is going to be, so we're going to place this NAT gateway in our public subnet A. Here it is right here. Couldn't find it. Allocate elastic IP. Okay. And then click create NAT gateway. All right. Let's go back to the NAT gateways dashboard, and we're going to do the exact same thing for availability zone B. So NAT gateway B. The subnet that we're going to put it in is going to be in the public subnet. Our NAT gateway will fit in the public subnet. Okay? So public subnet B, we must allocate an IP to it. And then we're going to scroll down and hit create NAT gateway. All right, perfect. So that has been created. We've created both of our NAT gateways. Now, they do take some time to actually complete as far as the state and actually creating it. So as you can see, they're still pending. So while they're doing that, I'm actually refresh this. Okay, it's going to take a little longer. Let's go to the route tables, okay? So now that we created our NAT gateways, now we have to attach them to our route tables so that when we're in our private instance and we want to access the internet, it's going to go through our NAT gateway, okay? Let's go ahead and go to private route table A. Let's start with that one. So we're going to click on that. We're going to click on the actions at the top right. Scroll down to edit routes. Okay, we're going to add route, and then we're going to put all IP addresses, which is the 0.0.0.0/0. We're going to click the target, go down to NAT gateway. Hopefully they're done creating. Let's see. Yep, they're done creating. So this is the private route table A, so we're going to pick the NAT gateway A. Okay, and then click save changes. All right, let's go back to the route table. And now let's go to the private route table B. Click on actions drop down, edit routes. Same thing. All IPs, go down to the NAT gateway. And instead of A, we're going to pick B, okay? And then we're going to put save changes. All right, perfect. So we've created our NAC gateways, and we've also associated and routed them correctly with our route tables, okay? So that concludes step number 4. Okay, a quick note before we go ahead and go to step number 5. I want to talk about our NACLs, okay? Our network access control list, okay? So we're in the VPC console. You want to scroll down under security and click network ACLs, okay? So we're not going to change our NACLs. I just want to do an honorable mention, right? Because these NACLs are a part of our architectural design. And so as you can see, we've already had a NACL automatically created for us on our behalf. The default NACL is what we see here. And if we click on it, this shows us that it has inbound rules and outbound rules. And so the default inbound and outbound rules allows all traffic, okay? So you'll see rule number 100 allows all traffic from any IP, okay? And then this asterisk is just the last rule, but in the NACLs, they do it on a weighted scale. So 100 weighs more than this asterisk, so they would enforce this first rule before they enforce this one, okay? And the same thing for the outbound rules, okay? It's allowing all outbound traffic, all traffic outside of the NACL, okay? And just a quick note, all our network access control list is pretty much our firewall at our subnet level, okay? So I just want to go ahead and just do this honorable mention to show you all that we do already have a NACL associated with our VPC. However, we won't be changing it, okay? Okay, so technically, the framework of our VPC is 100% complete, okay? However, we will be creating a Bastion host and 2 private instances in order to test what we've just created in our VPC. We're going to test the internet gateway, make sure it's connected and attached and working properly. The route tables, making sure that all the routes are properly routed correctly and making sure that we associated the subnets correctly. We're going to be testing the NAC gateway, etc. Okay, so that's what brings us to step number 5. Step number 5 is going to be for us to create our Bastion host. All right. So if we make our way to the EC2 console, I'm going to click here. We want to then go on the left-hand side panel and click instances. And then we want to go ahead and launch instances, okay? Now again, our Bastion host is going to allow us to SSH into the private instances that we will create in the next step, okay? So for the name, we're just going to name it Bastion host, okay? In order for us to stay in the free tier, we're just going to keep the AMI as Linux. We're going to keep this the same, free tier, 64-bit, the instance type T2 micro. We're going to keep all that the same, okay? Now scroll down for the key pair. We're going to drop down and click proceed without key pair. In this particular demonstration in this video, we're just going to use EC2 Connect, so there's no need to have a key pair. However, if you're going to use your own SSH client, you probably more than likely will need a key pair. And also, you know, when you're building infrastructures, you definitely want a key pair for added security, okay? But just for this demonstration purposes, we're not going to add one here. Scroll down to network settings, click edit. Currently, they automatically have us as the default VPC. You want to drop this down and click the demo VPC that we created. All right. We're going to have our Bastion host in the public subnet A, okay? So for subnet, let's click public subnet A, which is availability zone A. All right. We want to go ahead and assign this EC2 instance a public IP. Otherwise, it will be private. So let's go ahead and put enable public IP. And then lastly, we're going to create a security group, all right? So let's go ahead and name the security group. We can just name it Bastion Host SG. Okay, Bastion Host SG. So Bastion Host Security Group, all right? And from the SSH, we're going to allow SSH from anywhere. We already have it here. And you don't have to do anything for the description. We can just leave that what it is, okay? So that is all. Let's go ahead and click Launch Instance. All right, so let's go to instances, and this should be pending, all right? And we have successfully created our Bastion host. Okay, in step number 6, we're going to be creating our private instances. We're going to have one in subnet A and one in subnet B, okay? And they're going to be in the private subnets, okay, for both availability zone, all right? So we're already in the instance dashboard. Let's go ahead and click Launch Instances. All right, and we're going to name this private instance A. So we're going to make the instance that's going to be in private subnet A. Let's keep everything the same, Linux, architecture, T2 micro, all that the same, okay? And for the key pair, let's actually create a key pair. All right, and let's just name this VPC key pair. I'm gonna keep everything else the same, and we're gonna click create key pair. Now this is gonna be important because once we actually SSH into our Bastion host that we created in the previous step, we're then going to need this key pair in order to SSH into this EC2 that we're currently creating, okay? So as you can see, it has been created and it's downloaded on my computer. So make sure that file, put it and store it in a safe location because we will need the contents of that key pair of that file shortly, okay? So I have mine saved. So let's keep going down, edit network settings, change from the default to demo. And we're also going to keep private subnet A. So it's already on private subnet A. We're going to keep that. We're going to make sure that the public IP is disabled, correct? Because it's not a public IP, it's not a public instance, excuse me. And then lastly, we're going to create a security group, all right? So let's name the security group private instance SG, okay? I'm going to leave the description as the default. I'm not going to change that. And now next thing that I want to do, I want to add, actually, you know what? It's already right here. So instead of SSHing from anywhere, we want to change that and make it custom. And we want to only allow requests that are coming from our security group of our Bastion host, okay? So we want to limit and control who has access to SSH into this private instance. And it should only be the person who has access to SSH into our Bastion host. So in order to make sure we enforce that, let's attach our Bastion host right here. Let me go back to it. So make sure we attach our Bastion host security group. So whoever goes through our Bastion host security group can then SSH into our private instance that we're creating here, okay? So that's how we add the extra level of security to control who has access to SSH, okay? So that is it, and we're going to click Launch Instance. So that is launching. Okay, let's go back to the instance dashboard, and we're going to do the exact same thing for private instance B, which is going to be in the availability zone B, okay? So let me go ahead and quickly go through that. Let me go ahead and type it, private instance B. Scroll down, we're gonna keep everything the same. We're gonna use the same key pair that we just created, VPC key pair. Scroll down, edit the network settings, switch it to the demo VPC. Instead of private subnet A, this instance is gonna be in private subnet B. Keep that disabled. Instead of create security group, we're just going to select what the security group we just created, which is private instance SG. It's the exact same rules we want in this instance as well. And just click Launch Instance. All right, perfect. Let's go back to the dashboard. Okay, and that completes step number 6. Okay, so we've actually finished creating the entire architecture diagram for this video, okay? And we've just created the components that will allow us to test the underlying VPC infrastructure, okay? We create our Bastion host as well as our private instances, all right? So in this next few steps, what we're gonna be doing, we're actually gonna be testing our system, all right? So let's get into it. Okay, step number 7 is going to be for us to SSH into our Bastion host as well as SSH into our private instances and pretty much test the entire infrastructure and make sure we have proper connectivity, all right? So this is gonna be a pretty long step, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. So if you look at the screen, I'm already within the instance dashboard. So the first thing you want to do is SSH into the Bastion host, okay? So we're going to click Bastion host, select it right here. And for SSH, we're just going to click connect, okay? And we're going to make sure you click the tab EC2 Instance Connect and then click the connect button down here. All right, so again, we're going to use the EC2 Connect in order to SSH instead of using an outside client. So right now, let's see if it connects. All right, perfect. So we have successfully connected to our public Bastion host EC2 instance. All right. Now that we've SSH into our Bastion host, we want to go ahead and test to make sure that it has access to the internet. Okay. So what we want to type in, let's just type the command ping and let's just type in the Google website, right? So www.google.com. All right, and let's see if we receive feedback. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, we are receiving feedback. So I'm on a Windows computer. I'm gonna hold Shift, Control, I'm gonna hold Control and C. My bad. And if you get that same response, that means that you have successfully set up your root tables and your subnet and your internet gateway. Okay. Now, the next thing and the last thing that we're going to test, we want to go ahead and SSH into our private instance and make sure that that has access to the internet through our NAT gateway, okay? So in order to do that, we first must upload our key pair into this terminal, okay? And the key pair that I'm referring to is the VPC key pair that we created when we made our private instance A, okay? So in order to upload that file, let's use the command nano. And let's type in the key pair name, and it's called VPC key pair.pem. Hit enter. All right. So next, what you want to do, you want to go ahead and go to your file that's on your device, your computer, and you want to open it up and copy all of the content. I already have mine copied, so I'm going to just hit Shift Control V to paste it all in here. Okay. Once you've done that, you want to go ahead and hit Control X to exit, and then hit Y for yes, and then lastly hit enter. All right, perfect. All right, so now that we have the VPC key pair uploaded, the text file uploaded into this terminal, the next thing we want to do, we have to change the permissions of it, okay? We must make our VPC key pair only read and write access for users and nobody else, okay? So the current permissions that the default that is defaulted to is not correct. So let's use the command chmod. That will allow us to change the permissions, and let's use the code 400. And the code 400 allows read and write just for the owner, which is what we want. And let's type in VPC key, and you actually just put tab, and it'll finish it. So VPC, or you can just put V and hit tab, okay? Hit enter. All right, so we've properly changed the permissions, and pretty much that is the only setup. So now we can actually use the SSH in order to, the SSH command in order to SSH into our private instance, okay? And so that command is going to be SSH, all right? And then it's going to be EC2-user at, and what you want to do, you want to open up a separate tab, go back to the instance dashboard, okay? And we're trying to SSH into private instance A, so I'm going to click on that. And what we're going to need is the private IP address. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that right here, or you can just hit that copy right here, right? Let's go back into the EC2 Instance Connect, and I'm going to hit Shift Control V, okay? So we're pretty much telling the system that we want to SSH into this particular EC2 instance with this IP address, okay? And lastly, we want to go ahead and add the key pair to give us some permission. So that's going to be -I. Make sure the dash and I are side by side, then hit space. And we want to type in VPC key. Again, you can hit tab and it'll come up. All right. Now just hit enter. Scroll down. It says, are you sure you want to continue connecting? Type in yes, YES, hit enter. And we have successfully SSH into our private instance via our Bastion host, okay? So if you look at this right here, this is the IP address of our private instance, okay? And if you actually look right here, that's the private IP of our Bastion host, okay? Now, so we're SSH into our private instance. Now we want to make sure that it has access to the internet, okay? So much like we did our Bastion host, let's just type in the command ping, and then just let's use Google. So www.google.com. Let's see if we have access. All right, perfect. So we have access to the internet. So I'm gonna hit Control C, and that is it, ladies and gentlemen. We went ahead and tested, make sure our Bastion host had access to the internet, make sure the root tables were correctly configured and routed, made sure that the internet gateway was routed. And then we also did the same thing for our private instance to make sure that we still have access via the NAT gateway, okay? And so that will conclude the testing part of this video, all right? As a side note, feel free to use the exact same steps and instructions shown here if you want to test the private instance in the availability zone B. So our private instance B, okay? So you can do the exact same thing. I'm not going to show it on this video because I already know everything is working properly. But if you want to go ahead and do that, just follow the exact same instructions using the key pair and using this SSH command, okay? So that concludes it. All right, so the last thing we want to do, we want to go ahead and clean up this entire lab that we just completed, making sure that we deleted everything, okay? So I'm going to do that all in this last part of the video. That's going to be steps 8, 9, and 10. And we're going to go ahead and start off by going to our instance. So I'm going to click over to this next tab, and I'm going to delete all the instances. So I'm going to select this for all, hit actions, hit instance state and hit terminate instance. Okay, so that'll be step number 8 to delete all of the instances. Okay, step number 9 will go ahead and be, we have to delete the NAT gateway. So let's make our way over, go to the VPC console, go down to NAT gateways. All right, and we have to delete these one by one. So NAT gateway A, let's go ahead and hit actions, delete it, type in delete. All right, so that's done. And then click NAT gateway B, go to actions, type in delete. Okay, now all of this may take some time, so I'm gonna give it a few seconds and I'm gonna come back, okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and check to make sure that our NAT gateway has been deleted. We see deleted right here, refresh, that looks good. I'm gonna go back to the EC2 console and check on the instances. Make sure they're deleted, or terminated rather. They have been terminated, shown here. That's good. And the last thing, step number 10, let's go back to the VPC console. Step number 10, we must go ahead and delete our VPC. So let's go ahead and click your VPC. Uncheck the default, let's check the demo. Click actions, and then click delete VPC. Okay? And you all may be wondering, what about the subnet? What about the internet gateway? What about the internet gateway? What about the root tables? If you look right here, it's going to delete the subnets. It's going to delete the internet gateway. It's going to delete all the root tables. It's going to delete everything associated with this VPC. All right. So let's go ahead and type in delete. Security groups deleted, subnets, everything, as you can see. And we are complete. All right. So we've completed our cleanup. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate everybody who stuck to the end of this video. That concludes the demo, the video of how to create a VPC from scratch in AWS, okay? So we've done a lot, and I appreciate those that stuck to the end, okay? So make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you like this type of content, man. So I really appreciate y'all. I want to say God bless and peace out. Y'all be good, all right?